What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pit Nerds, your daily nerd out on the most interesting car of the day on all the automotive enthusiast auction sites. If you're new to Bid Nerds, what we do here is we pick the most interesting car of the day, we talk about it, and then we make a prediction as to what we think it'll actually sell for or hammer at when its respective auction is over. And then we'll show you. We're just going to show you what happened. We'll make a prediction, then like that, you can time travel, and you'll know exactly how much it sold for at the end of this particular video. So stick around towards the end. We'll tell you how much the car sold for when we get to it. But first, make sure you hit the subscribe, like, and notification button if you haven't already. By the way, my name is John Polnik. I'm your host. We are in the Las Vegas Container Park in downtown Las Vegas, along with my partner, Michael Deeb, who is not in the Container Park. He is in San Francisco. How you doing, Michael Deeb?
I'm not even allowed within 500 yards of a container park after that last incident.
It's true. They still have your picture out front,
right,
so everyone knows. All right, guys. You clicked on this video because you're like, yeah, I don't know. How much is a 2007 GT3 worth these days? Let's talk about it, Michael Deeb. What do you think? How much is a GT3 worth?
JP, we normally pick the most interesting car. This is just the most interesting scenario. I can't. We've been doing this now for like 2 years. I don't recall Doug DeMuro selling a GT3 like ever. It just never happens. He sells all the special Boxsters and Cayman R's and all that crap, and he sells all the SUVs. And if you're looking for a Panamera, Doug DeMuro is your guy. But to see a 997 low mile Grand Prix white GT3, this is a Metzger engine. You and I would call this a real GT3. On Doug DeMuro's site, we couldn't pass up the opportunity to peek in and take a deeper dive on this car. So offered out of Harriman, New York, with just 22,800 miles, is this 2007 997.1 GT3. Really beautiful car. Looks to be in excellent condition. But JP, I know you don't like it when I do this, but I think it's worth noting. With only two owners, the first owner in 2011 had an accident in this car. It's on the Carfax, and it shows that the accident involved damage to the front of the car with an airbag deployment, and that the vehicle had to be towed away from the scene of the accident. The car looks to be in spectacular condition, but I did not get a deep dive and find out who did the work and how long it took and how extensive it was. So it is kind of a little bit of a crapshoot for a car. Inevitably, you'll be speeding in and risking your life in. The car is equipped with the PCCBs, which are Porsche ceramic composite braking system. All the GT3s came with the special suspension and adaptive sport seats and limited slip differentials and close ratio gearboxes. This is one of my favorite cars of all times. In fact, when this car came out, and a lot of them were delivered in white, I thought that the facade of this car reminded me of a stormtrooper from Star Wars, of which I'm a bit of a small fanboy of, at least the original movies. I'm the right age for all that nonsense. I love this car. This car is kind of why I sort of fell in love with Porsche as an adult, and then wound up buying a car similar to this of the next generation. I think these cars are gorgeous. I think they're great driving cars. It's one of my favorite Porsches of all time. And I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't buy one before they went through they crossed over the 100,000 barrier and just kept on going. A low mile versions of these cars, John, will bring over $150,000. It'll be interesting to see if either Cars and Bids as a auction site or the accident that is on the Carfax will hold this one back. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, even though you're Mr. Pessimistic. I think they will. I don't think this car stands a chance to bring retail money. And I think the consignor knows that, and that's why he chose to put it on here. He either needed the money right away because he could get his car on Cars and Bids in a short period of time, or he wanted to avoid the scrutiny that would come with bringing a low-mile major accident car on to bring a trailer, and he didn't want to have to answer the questions because the current owner is not the owner when the accident happened. And I suspect, my intuition is he's trying to avoid that headache and just put it on here and just see what it brings. And he can protect it with the reserve of his choice because Doug DeMuro will pull down his pants for anybody. So there you go, John. I hand it over to you. What do you think is going on here?
Yeah, I think that accident is going to be an issue. You mentioned that I don't like it when you mention the accidents. This car, what bugs me is when someone says the car has a bad Carfax, and when someone says bad Carfax,
I say it.
yeah, well, but you're not the only person that does that. It's pretty
Right,
it's pretty
right.
common, right?
Yeah.
Here's what'll happen: is some car dealer, when you're trying to trade your car in, will say, "Well, your car has a bad Carfax because it had a fender bender." But when they're
Yeah.
trying to sell you a car and there's a fender bender, they're like, "Oh no, it's just a minor accident." So
Yeah, it's
they
nothing.
they weaponize it, and they that's what ticks me off about the phraseology of the whole thing. Look, if this car had an accident on Carfax, okay, that is a small check against it. When you go and look at what that accident was, what actually happened, and you find out that the car deployed airbags and had to be towed, okay, that's a significant accident. Something happened. Now, that doesn't necessarily that wouldn't preclude me from necessarily buying the car. It certainly would for a big chunk of potential buyers. And even the people that would consider buying this car, you're absolutely right, they will expect a discount. Cars and bids, I agree with you, is the wrong place for this car. I actually think the guy should have sold this on P-Car Market.
Correct. Yeah.
P-Car Market, at least this is a Porsche. At least this is a wonderful Porsche. This is a very sought-after car, a white-on-black GT3. This is a blue chip rig, right? Everybody wants this car.
John, this car is in New York as well, and I think you and I agree that those guys being based in Oyster Bay, New York, man, they do really well with cars in their own backyard.
Yeah.
I can't imagine why this car is not on P-Car Market. It's shocking.
Yep. And now you go back to the Carfax thing. When someone says it has a bad Carfax, what I hear in my head is a crash recovery, like a salvage title, a car that was crashed so badly
Right.
that the owner had to be bought out of the car, and the car was given to an auction site that sold it as a total rebuild, right?
Branded title. Yeah.
Branded title. So you do not want a car like this with a branded title. But the only reason you would want a car like that is if you got it for an incredible discount, or maybe you were going to make a race car out of it or something to that
Right.
effect. So just having an accident on the Carfax report doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It's just you got to dig a little deeper. And this car, looks like that accident may have been somewhat significant, but it wasn't bad enough to total the car. And these days, the insurance adjusters love to just write cars off. I mean, it's just, especially a car like this, because if you're the owner and you have an accident on this car, you don't want it fixed. You just basically want to be out of that car because you don't want to have to deal with people worrying about an accident on the stupid Carfax when you got to go
Right.
sell it. It makes a significant difference. So, I mean, it's not hard to find a Porsche shop that will say, yeah, this car's totaled, and even when maybe it shouldn't have been. So what will happen with this car? P-Car Market would have been a better auction site, but here we are on Cars and Bid. Is this an opportunity to get an amazing car at maybe a discount? What do you think?
It is, but I'm sure it's protected by a reserve, and so it'll be interesting to flush out in the next few days where that reserve is and what the bids will bid this car up to. So John, with 3 days to go until the close of auction on this '07 GT3 in New York with just 22,000 original miles, our car is sitting at $92,000 on just 5 bids. Not a lot of action, which is really interesting. Again, Doug DeMuro, in my opinion, does not have a lot of experience with these really special cars that the enthusiasts go nuts for, even you and I. But I do think there's a number this car will reach. I just don't know if it'll sell at that price. So I put down $126,000, which is close to the original MSRP on the car, which was $124,500. The question is, if I'm right, does it reach that? And is that the number that the consignor has in mind? What I'm saying is, at $126,000, which I think DeMuro can bring to this car, I bet the consignor, that number doesn't reach reserve, and I bet it's still a no sale at that number. So I'll hand it back to you and tell you, I think the consignor is either hiding something or is delusional, or has been banned from P-Car Market for some god awful reason. Who knows? But I think it goes to 126, and I think it's a no sale at that number.
P-Car Market versus Cars and Bids. This is the big battle right here.
Yeah.
I agree with you. P-Car Market would have allowed a much higher reserve, though, whereas Cars and Bids, I think, I don't think they whore themselves out. I think they're a little bit more. I think they're more realistic on their reserves. And Doug DeMuro recently made a post. I can't remember if it was on Instagram or Twitter, or maybe it was a recent video, but he basically said he was talking about the adjustment in reserve prices because they're seeing a lot of customers bring their cars to the auction site with these crazy high reserve expectations, and their representatives are having to talk people off the ledge, so to speak. So I don't think I think that's why this car maybe makes more sense on P-Car, because, okay, fine, you have a high reserve. At least the car has a second chance in the deal tank, which P-Car Market has, and Cars and Bids does not.
Do you think he would whore himself out and let this guy set a high reserve just to get a GT3 on his site? I wouldn't put it past him.
I don't think so.
I wouldn't put it past him. All right. I have no faith in humanity, so whatever.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know Doug DeMuro, but he is – look, this is definitely a car – I think a lot of cars come to that auction site that maybe he doesn't pay that close attention to. I'm sure he sees every single car, but he's not writing those blurbs at this point. And in turn is writing that stuff. But a car like this, he absolutely knows is on his site and he's paying attention to. So what do you guys think? I mean, what a great car, right? I mean, we haven't really talked about that. GT3, a 997 GT3 is one of the best cars of all time. All time. And I'm afraid... I'm just afraid that they're just. I'm priced out of them. I don't see myself ever dropping that kind of money for. Anyways, okay.
It might only read 400 horsepower, but it feels so much more than that. Everything you'd ever expected a car could do, this car does. It's a fantastic driving car. I love it. So we'll see.
Well, before we go to the break and find out exactly how much this car does bring on Cars and Bids, I will tell you my bid. I think you're right. Fails to sell 120. Cars and Bids.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Cars and Bids is also one of the few sites that doesn't have a lot of late action, or at least sometimes we see that. BAT. P-Car Market, all those other sites, we always see late action. It's always at the very end. Something about Cars and Bids, just like...
You know why that is? Doug DeMuro has the shortest clock.
Yeah, so if you guys aren't familiar, at the end of... When an auction is set to end on all of the auction sites, unlike eBay, when the auction ends on eBay, right? On Cars and Bids and P-Car Market and Bring a Trailer, if someone bids in the last 2 minutes, it adds another 2 minutes on Bring a Trailer. Same thing with P-Car Market, whereas on Cars and Bids, it's only 1 minute. Is that what you're saying, Michael Deeb?
I think it's 1 minute 30 seconds. It's really weird. It's so hipster. Yeah. It's a weird number you wouldn't understand.
What do you guys think? Is this the right site for this car? Would you guys buy a car with a Carfax accident on it that is as severe as this one appears to have been? Let us know in the comments below and hit the subscribe, like, and notification button, and we will find out how much this car sells for right after this. Okay, guys, I want to tell you about Vegas Auto Fest. The drivers are coming. This is one of our big sponsors. It's the biggest car show of the year in Las Vegas. It's one of the coolest car shows you can possibly experience anywhere. If you haven't made plans to be part of Vegas Auto Fest on September 17th, then do it now. Go to vegasautofest.com and register your car. You think you're a car enthusiast? Doesn't matter where you live. Plan a trip to Vegas on September 17th and come out and see this show. It's like Monterey Car Week all in a day. Have you ever been to the Quail? Have you ever been to Works Reunion? Have you ever been to Amelia Island? All those car shows are amazing and great. Have you been to Luftkult? Sure, but Vegas Auto Fest is something special. Make a plan for September 17th. We'll see you in Vegas. All right, guys, welcome back to the break. After the break, thanks for sticking around. My name is JP, along with my partner Michael Deeb. We're doing the most interesting car of the day from all the automotive enthusiast auction sites. Today, we're talking about this GT3 on. Let's see, this would be Cars and Bids. Now, just before we get to the car, a lot of people wonder why we're always like after the break, we just seem to have no idea where the heck we are. It's because it's been a week, man.
Yeah, I know.
We told you about this car, went away for a week, and now here it is, the end of the auction. It's over, and we're here to tell you about it.
Yeah.
You did it like that in 60 seconds. We had to wait the whole darn week.
Yeah.
All right, so what happened with this GT3?
What GT3?
On Cars and Bids?
Huh?
Yeah, right?
Look, my computer's moving low today. JP, you know what's funny is our show is based on covering the interesting car of the day on all the automotive platforms. This might be the most interesting result in that one, rarely see GT cars, like kind of like exotic sports cars, don't often populate Cars and Bids, DeMiro's auction night. So I thought it was really interesting that he had this 997 GT3. And the car, let me give you our numbers real quick, John, just to catch the viewers up. I thought this car would be $126,000. You took the under. This car did have an accident at one point with an airbag deployment. So you said $120,000. And again, those results are based on the car being on Cars and Bids. We really factored that into our guesses. Our car failed to sell at $110,000 on just 14 bids. But a day later, this car sold. And what's interesting, and John, maybe you can pull up the homepage for this lot so that the viewers can see it on the screen. It says bid to $110,000, and then in parentheses they sold after. And John and I have been covering. Actually, John's been watching Doug DeMiro's site since he opened it. I've been watching it since we've been doing the show for which is basically a little over a year and a half. We've never seen Cars and Bids write something like this, and it's not to say they never sold a car after, but I'm suspicious. I think they wrote that because DeMiro wants everybody to know he can sell a GT3 car, so he'll get more clients like this. Because I think it's lucrative for him. These are six-figure. Most of these sports and exotic cars in this market are six figures, and I think that would be good for him. So I just thought you and I both we sort of snickered and laughed at. That he wrote sold after, like, don't worry guys, I sold it, like don't panic kind of thing. So anyway, JP, what do you think of this result for the car, for the platform, the whole thing? What's your take?
I mean, yeah, I could see why Doug DeMiro did that. I mean, it's a good move on his part to go ahead and say that he was able to actually sell this car. What I'm curious on is how, like, what mechanism did they use to go ahead and make this sale? I sold a car on the now, I guess it's defunct Rad for Sale. Our friends at DWA, they had in Radwood.
It's going to come back. They sold the franchise to Haggerty, and I think Haggerty's going to do something with it. That's my loose understanding. That is not a truth. That's a speculation, but I think Haggerty will do something with Rad for Sale. So the original website is a landing page for the moment. So I think it's going to come back.
I would like to see them come back, but that's a whole other discussion.
Right.
My point for bringing them up is that, for sure, is that I sold a car there and it failed to sell. Which not many cars did sell on Rad for Sale, unfortunately. But mine was one of them that failed, but there were a handful of bidders, and Rad for Sale just straight up gave the bidders my contact info with my permission. They didn't do it. They didn't just do it willy-nilly. They reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to, some of these bidders are still interested in your vehicle. Would you like to talk to them? I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? So they facilitated, or at least they put us together. So how much work did Cars and Bids and Doug DeMiro's team do to make this sale happen? And given the fact that they made such a big deal out of it, saying that sold after something we've never seen before. I suspect they bent over backwards to make this car sell.
I did,
because you're
yeah.
right. Because if it didn't, they'd never, ever, ever see another one on their platform
GT3,
again.
no way. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it'd be a disaster for a car like this that is basically blue chip. This is one of the most sought after cars. For this car to fail to sell, just is a huge.
So JP, 4 phone calls. I bet they called the consignor and found out, all right, what's your absolute bottom line. Like we're gonna call probably the top 2 or 3 bidders and ask them what's the car worth to them. Like, hey, like we got the consignor to come off his reserve 5% or whatever that number wound up being, and then one of these 2 or 3 guys that were the top bidders on this car must have stepped up and they bridged the gap halfway. They might have also played with their their consignment fees from either side, saying, hey, if we come off a percentage, will you lower the reserve a little bit, and vice versa to the buyer. They might have done something like that as well to try and consummate a deal. It should be worth noted that even though they wrote sold after, that doesn't mean they sold it for $110,000. We don't know what the sale price of the car is. We just thought it was very interesting that Doug DeMuro wanted to make sure everybody knew that Cars and Bids did sell this car. The other thing I want to... Oh, go ahead, JP.
Well, yeah, I want to comment on the fact that we don't know how much it sold for. I think that's a bad move on DeMuro's part, because one of the values of having these auction sites available and the results available online is that they give us all comps, right? We all kind of have a good idea. We could say, all right, let's look around. What's one of these worth? Whatever the car is. If you can look it up, the past results on the auctions, you can get a pretty good idea, right? In P-Car Market, we, poop on all the time because I think there's a lot of things wrong with that platform. The one thing that they have that's unique is their deal tank, whereas if a car fails to sell, it goes into their classified sections, and you can still see the bidding history on those cars. And they may set a specific sale price, but they'll tell you what it actually sells for ultimately when and if it does. This just leaves us all in the dark. Sold after. What does that mean? They sold it for the 110? Did they? Did the person just accept the 110? BAT. In one of my couple of auctions that I've done there, they did hit me up late in the auction and ask me if I wanted to lower my reserve on a car that I had a reserve on.
I bet they did.
So it's not uncommon for them to actively kind of meddle in the auction as it's getting near the end. But I don't know of any case where they've actually tried to sell a car after the fact.
Yeah, working both sides. It's interesting, like you said, John, to run with your point, these platforms become data points for comps and results, and it gives us a fair indication of what the market is for a particular model and the condition of that model, because you could look at the lot for each one. This one doesn't tell us anything, which is also a reflection of the fact that Doug DeMuro's auction platform is not set up to share with results, correctly, because this doesn't really tell us anything. He just want everybody to know that he sold it. But yeah, when they call you, when Bring a Trailer calls you before the your lot closes, before the auction's done, that's John, that's the stuff, the SHIT, that pisses me off. Like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be advocating for me. You're supposed to be working the buyers. Why are you working me? We already made our deal. I agreed to your stupid reserve, which is entirely too low. We all know I want more for the car, and now you're asking me to take less, and we haven't even found out where it's going to land at. What I will say is that it's Bring a Trailer's protocol that if your car fails to sell, they will put the highest, whoever made the highest bid on your lot, you two will be put in touch with each other in some manner or form. I don't know how that works. The guy who was the high bidder on my car that failed to sell didn't respond. So I got nowhere with that, which was really a bummer. So anyways.
Interesting. Yeah, I've only sold a couple of cars on BAT, but they've always sold, so I haven't had the experience of what happens after FTS. Here's the thing, Doug DeMuro, if you are now offering, closing services after the fact on cars that are FTS, put that out there. Make that a feature. Your auction site is not as good as BAT's, and you need every bit of help you can get. Why wouldn't you say, okay, in some cases we're going to try to nudge this thing along to help the seller? I mean, are you only doing that on high profile cars like this? On the rest of the cars, are you like, well, you're SOL? I get that you don't want everybody to think that you can't sell a GT3, but the fact is you can't. By way of your normal traditional auction site, you failed.
Save your breath, JP. I guarantee you, not everybody's getting this service. He wanted everybody to know he could sell this GT3. We all know Doug DeMuro's got a very short clock, and I don't think that helps his closing at all. But interesting. Sold after. What a little. Hey, but wait about me. Pretty funny.
Swing and miss.
I want to go back. It's a little bit out of bounds, but I want to go back. When you did your thing with Rad for Sale and your car didn't close, I wonder if they would share all the information with any consignor that didn't sell a car, or if they did that especially to you because you're friends with all those guys. I would also quantify that in saying almost anybody that ran a car on Rad for Sale is probably friends with all those guys. And so maybe they did it for everybody. But listening to your story and knowing the people involved, I'm like, oh, they probably don't do that for everybody, but they definitely did that for John because they wanted, more than anything, they wanted to make sure you got your car sold. And I thought that I think that's very stand-up of them to do. And I also sort of say they probably would do that for just about anybody because they probably knew everybody that tried to sell a car with them. So, anyways, they're all driving new cars now, John. They sold it to the man. They sold it to the man, and they all got new cars. When is Haggerty going to buy Bid Nerds,
Yeah, when we get more than 4 followers. So while you're out there, guys, you're watching the show, why don't you subscribe so we can sell to Haggerty and sell out too, and we can just say every car on the Haggerty auction site is the greatest car ever. We definitely want to sell out here at Bid Nerds. That is our goal, so that we can just bring you all the nerd love. There it is, guys. Hit the subscribe, like, and notification button. We do this every day. We pick the most interesting car of the day from all the automotive auction sites, bring it to you, talk about that car. What do you think the most interesting car of the day should be on a future auction that you're looking at? Let us know in the comments below, and maybe we'll pick that car as one of the cars that we profile in an episode coming up. But in the meantime, we will see you tomorrow. Michael Deeb, thank you very much.
Yeah. Woohoo.
See you guys.
Get those words!